The views, information, or opinions expressed in this episode are solely those of individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, our funders, or any of the organizations affiliated with this project. Welcome to a Seeds of Wellbeing Experts in the Field podcast, featuring people working in their fields of expertise to provide support for agriculture producers in Hawaii, in the United States, and in some cases around the world. These podcasts are made possible by a grant from the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, also known as CTAHR, and the Seeds of Wellbeing or SOW project, and is supported by a grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. Aloha. We're here with on the Seeds of Wellbeing podcast and talking to Ken Love, who's the Executive Director of Hawaii Tropical Fruit Growers and Hawaii Master Food Preservers. Tropical Fruit Growers has a membership of about 2,000 or more people and a Facebook group which was started in 2009 that now has 22.6 thousand members and all over the world. And I think Ken's also been involved in 33 years of annual conferences related to tropical fruit that have been held in Hawaii, and is the owner of Love Family Farms in Captain Cook, which is near Kona on the Big Island of Hawaii. So welcome, Ken. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, no problem.
It is likely that anyone interested in or involved in growing fruit in Hawaii has heard the name of Ken Love from the Big Island of Hawaii. In this episode, we speak with Ken about how he became the local pundit on tropical fruit, some thoughts on the most profitable fruits to grow and why, the importance of connecting with local chefs, the Hawaii Master Fruit Preservers program, and other musings from this local icon.
I keep hearing that about being the owner of Love Family Farms, but I think it's much more. It's grown out of being a personal farm. I kind of view us as the mother repository, where Hawaii Tropical Fruit Growers has 2 acres on every island, including Lanai, and we feed germplasm into those locations in order for our membership to be able to get plant material and and develop economically beneficial crops. And people ask me all the time, well, what's your job? And I got to scratch my beard and go, I'm not 100% sure. I try to help farmers make money, and become more sustainable. And that's usually through germplasm or choices or market development. When we were talking before, you had mentioned about, where we go from here. And it's, new farmers have choices. There's a lot of new farmer grant money, and we keep pushing people to do this, that, and the other thing. Why UH picks the most labor-intensive crops to promote is just absolutely beyond me, and absolutely absurd if you look at the USDA Agriculture Statistics Service. I'm not going to grow coffee or mac nuts or cacao anymore. It's go through all the processes of fermentation and picking things by hand, other than oranges. We import 22 million pounds of oranges. It's not, I just pick the orange off the tree, put them in the box, and send the box to the wholesaler. It's a whole lot easier than having to pick stuff, ferment it, wash it, dry it, process it, husk it, peel it. Just pick the oranges and send them out.
That sounds like a great idea. So what was the term you used there? Germ stock? Was that the phrase you used?
Germplasm.
Germplasm. Tell me what that is.
Well, it just means different plant material. This is basically just plant material.
Okay, so that could be grafting or air layering.
Like oranges. How many cultivars or varieties of oranges? And the difference there, people wonder, well, what's the difference between cultivar and variety? And variety is just any kind of orange, and cultivar is something that's cultivated, for economic benefit. Then again, if we only grafted and had cultivars, we wouldn't have any diversity. So there's everything, and as a farmer, as someone who wants to start farming and who wants to be successful in farming, which is even harder, ask a farmer how much money they make and what are they going to do? So you have two choices if you want to farm. You either try to farm crops that fit into an existing area like oranges, or you develop a farm or a growing area for crops that people haven't heard of. So right now we're pushing ma prang, tampoi, and we've been pushing durian for a little while. And durian is the fruit that they don't allow on buses in Thailand because of the smell and all that. And I think most people are familiar with it. A lot of kids just love it now. I mean, it's we used to sell it for $30 and for one fruit. Now the fruit is roughly the size of a basketball, or can be, so they're big fruit, and that would go for 30, and then I'll give you 50 for it. People are fighting over them. We even had them at the Four Seasons during a PGA tournament, and I had two pro golfers, well-known pro golfers, fighting over the last piece of durian, at a fruit display. So it's very popular. What's good for us for growing durian at least below 1,000 feet in Hawaii is that there's no pest risk assessment required. So you could actually take it on an airplane to the mainland. Not that you'd want to be sitting next to somebody with a box full of durian up above, but I've done it. It's legal. So Thai Town in Los Angeles will buy a container of durian every week from you or more during the season. We can't get enough of them here. And if we don't do it, the Aussies are going to do it, and the Philippines are going to do it. Everybody else is going to be sending fresh durian to the mainland. I mean, there's already a little bit coming in from Mexico, like with jackfruit. 10 years ago, you never saw jackfruit on the mainland, and now even in Chicago, if I go visit my daughter, there's jackfruit in every corner grocery store.
But do you think durian could sell well just on the islands in Hawaii, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's already being sold in Chinatown and Honolulu and at farmers markets, all the Hilo farmers markets, and in Kona. Well, we can't get enough of it in Kona. And my wife at her stand sells it out. Every day she has it, it's gone. And my son is the chef at the Orchid Fairmont, so I mean, he has to buy what we grow, otherwise out of the will. It's that simple. So he but he's really good. He's understood what it takes to utilize local tropical fruit, and so he's developed lots of recipes over the years. We work with the state culinary school. I actually used to be president of the ACF, American Culinary Federation, in Hawaii. So we have, and we've had some regional conferences here, and it's really helped to develop the use of tropical fruit. So my goal, and I guess the one thing that I'd have to say I was proud of, was getting chefs to look at, and chefs are arguably a grower's best customers here, but getting them to look at fruit in a different way. 30 years ago, bring in something to a chef and it had to go on a buffet line or in an in-room amenity basket. It had to be perfect looking and nice and taste nice and sweet. Now we can sell them Balimbi, which I don't know what your excuse is, but it made my hair fall out. We had to go to the extreme in terms of finding, the ethnic recipes, how these fruits were utilized in the countries where they first came from, how they found their way to Hawaii. Some fruit we can trace back to the 1700s when Don DeFrisco de Paula Marin first got it in. And he was Kamehameha the Great's interpreter. And how was that fruit used in those days? You know, people say you can't grow grapes in Hawaii. Well, Vineyard Avenue is named Vineyard Avenue because Marin grew grapes there and made wine that he sold to visiting sea captains and gave to Kamehameha the Great. So there's a lot of history here too. And once we utilize the history in terms of determining how to utilize the crops we grow, it's a lot easier to market those crops.
It sounds like a lot of what you've been doing is, as you said, you're trying out new things. And it sounds like a big piece of that is, and maybe with your son's help as chef, is trying to help introduce these fruits that may have been used historically and haven't been recently, introduce them back into the islands and also educate. It sounds like education is a big piece of how these things become popular or introduced or reintroduced to the islands. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we started with Chef Paul at our culinary school, which is now Palamanui, but it just used to be West Hawaii Community College. Chef Paul Heerline had the students utilize. We had a 12 trees project in 05, I think it was. And to make a long story short, the students were required to utilize a locally grown tropical fruit in each public luncheon 2 days, 3 days a week. Those students who are now chefs in various restaurants and hotels around the state remember that, and now they're buying more of those locally grown tropical fruit. So we've seen the progression of that first education from almost 20 years ago. I think 05 to 10, yeah, so almost 20 years ago, where it's really made quite a difference, and it's growers have been able to increase the marketable crop. I've done the same thing by providing material to grocery stores like Choice Mart and Captain Cook. I like to use things that are close to me because I don't like to drive that much. So we use Choice Mart, Captain Cook, and they were test marketing a lot of the fruit. That we did, even in terms of finding, price point. We can base something on an accurate cost of production. Which, if I had one pet peeve, it's that UH never replaced Dr. Kent Fleming for teaching cost of production to farmers. And the positions aren't here or they don't hold. And so there has to be somebody to teach growers cost of production. When I go, it's no fun for me to go to farmers markets. When I see 10 tangerines for $1, six Meyer lemons for $1, it costs you 27 cents to produce one of them. It's not real sustainable when you grow 6, sell them at 6 for $1.
Well, if it helps, I know Go Farm is actually pushing cost of production in their Ag Excel quite a bit, and it's a lot of work, but it's eye opening, right?
Yep. No, exactly. Go Farms, FarmLink, and Mao are all get it. These are great groups that just get it and get what it takes to be able to help small farmers become sustainable.
Yep. Well, tell us about how Hawaii tropical fruit growers started, and maybe the more recent development and creation of Hawaii Master Food Preservers. Just give us some of the history. How did you get to Hawaii, and why the Big Island, and give us a little bit of your journey and the founding of those outfits.
Yeah, I got sent here in, I guess it was 81 or something, or 82 to, I was with Associated Press, and I got sent here to photograph a number of things on different islands, and that was the morning the volcano blew off, and it was always kind of a dream. In fact, if you looked at the recent eruption from about 3 months ago, the New York Times couldn't get the picture in time of the eruption from 3-4, was it a month ago or so? I can't remember exactly, but they used my picture from 1983 and said what it was. And there, my name was in the New York Times, under the photograph, the photo by Ken Love, Associated Press, and it was from 1983. '83, but people didn't see the date, so I was getting all these phone calls, and it was pretty funny. But anyway, so I got here to do that kind of stuff, and went over to Kona and just sort of got hooked on that. Came back into that November to photograph the Kona Coffee Festival, and really got hooked on it and said, nah, I'm gonna stay here. And it was a number of years before we got here, but I'd bought a farm long before we moved.
Was that a coffee farm?
Yeah, yeah, it was coffee, but actually we started with 26 acres with my partner, Mr. Takashiba, and then went down to he sold off his 16, and then I had my 10, which I eventually sold off, and now I'm down to 2. The older I get, the smaller the farm gets, so I'll be in a little condo in a year or two. No, I've got 2 acres with 300 species on it now, and this provides that germplasm again, so that we have all these unusual cultivars and varieties of tropical fruit in order to clone it and send it to fruit growth. For example, we have 250 types of figs right now, about 10 types of oranges. I can't, maybe 6, 8 types of durian. Because there really hasn't been a lot of research of what elevation, what microclimates, what type of soils are required for specific things. So all we can do is continue to work to get that information, and to be able to provide different things to growers. Well, try these 3 types of oranges, see what works best for you.
And is
Well,
that data mostly available, or are they mostly available through your Facebook or through being a member, or what's the best way to access those data?
being involved with the fruit growers, and we have chapters and chapter presidents on each island. All that information is on HTFG.org, so Hawaii Tropical Fruit Growers .org.
And what caused you to launch that formally, HTFG?
Well, I wasn't involved. That was done in 1989. And it was, I don't know how many, 14, 15 members at that time. And I got involved, I think, in 95, 96. And I said, well, it could be a lot more than this. And I kind of had a problem with the way things were done in Hilo, where the organization was run out of, because they would get federal money to promote the crops in Hawaii, which was usually lychee and rambutan, and things we didn't really grow that much of in Kona. Like, why aren't you promoting the mangoes and the avocados, things that we grow here? Well, it wasn't. They didn't grow them, so they didn't promote them. So I got involved in the organization, and things changed after that, and all of a sudden we have 2,000 members on every island, and we try to be equitable, and we try to help small backyard growers as well as larger commercial growers. I mean, it's said, there's a old Japanese expression that if you try to serve everyone, you can't stand your own ground. Well, sometimes it gets kind of wobbly, but so far we've been trying to balance things so that we make things available to everyone. Try to be equitable.
Nice. Yeah, and I think membership is open to anyone, or any certain requirements to be a member?
Nope. Nope. Just our mission is to promote any and all aspects of tropical fruit, of growing and marketing tropical fruit in the state of Hawaii. We don't really care if you're growing 1 or 2 trees or 5,000 trees. You had asked me to mention the Hawaii Master Food Preservers too, which grew out of Hawaii tropical fruit growers, at least in Hawaii. Every other state, the Master Food Preservers are a function of University Extension. And when I trained in California and brought the program back, UH wasn't interested unless I got them a big grant. And I didn't want to lose that 30%. So we wrote the grant for the fruit growers and started it. And now we're always looking for funding to do more classes, but we have usable kitchens on in Kona, Maui, Kauai, Molokai, and Lanai. So we've done lots of classes on every island except Oahu because they're still working on their rail. Where we teach in Hilo, which starts next Thursday, actually, the parking is against the Matson yard. And so you can see all the trucks coming in and being loaded into the containers, and the boat is 50 feet from where I park. And in that 50-foot area, we see the trucks with the produce sitting in the sun for 3 hours before they get loaded into a container. And, no wonder by the time they get there, they're pretty bad. And people have no concept of what they're doing. They have no concept of post-harvest. Bob Paul is probably the best post-harvest guy in the world, and nobody listens to him. I mean, he saved Bulgaria, in terms of assisting their companies learn about post-harvest. It's the same thing with value added. So when I talk about value added, I'm not just talking about jams and jellies. I'm talking about value added begins in the field. When you harvest Chipotle Cava or Suriname cherry or most of the small fruit that we are developing markets for, or have been developing markets just in the last 10 years, even guava, which is a lot longer. If you take those and you put them in a box, you put the box in the truck, and then you go to a different tree, load up another box, put that in the truck, those guava are going to last 2 days, 3 days. When we harvest, we take it, we load it into a cooler, pre-chill cooler at the base of the tree, and then put the cooler in the shade until we're ready to drive back to the ideal way to harvest Chipotle Cava and Suriname cherry is to load it in a clamshell, put that clamshell in the cooler, and then take the cooler back to the shed. You get a week instead of 3 days. So as a chef or as a produce manager, I want to buy stuff from you that has the longest shelf life possible. And until farmers get that post-harvest aspect of helping your customers provide a better product to their customers, we're not really going to move forward. And so that's really essential. I mean, things that these are the things that UH needs to teach. UH also needs to teach things like they're doing a pretty good job of explaining avocado lace bug and what it takes to combat avocado lace bug. The problem is that how many avocado orchards, are nice, neat orchards with trees pruned at 8 feet or 10 feet, maybe one or two. Our trees are 40 or 50 feet, and these people have been harvesting them for 60 years. And however they harvest them, it doesn't matter. That's what they've been doing. And these are the avocados in the marketplace. And now they're not getting them because the lace bugs defoliated the tree. Everything's sunburned and comes down with big blotches when they harvest it. So it's useless. So teach people how to prune their trees properly, even if it's one tree. If you want to learn how to harvest avocados, come to my farm. I'm the only one you're going to hear bitch about having to bend over to harvest avocados. The trees are that low, and we get 150 of them on 10 by 15 foot trees every year.
Nice.
We'll tell you get a lot more if your trees were higher. Yeah, but how much time? I mean, we have to think in terms of cost of labor. So I can walk around and pick that tree in 15 minutes. And when you're using a stick to have to get one avocado off and then clip the stem off that avocado, you've quadrupled the time it takes to harvest that. So how much labor worth?
Yeah, going back to your cost of production reminder, is that's kind of key to knowing if it makes sense, right? Is what does that net out for your cost? Nice. I've heard you talk about some crops that you think are maybe up and coming. So I'm thinking of people that either are doing permaculture or looking to grow some tropical fruit on the islands. Any thoughts or suggestions on?
I mean, I think first you have to decide whether you want to fit into something like we were talking about, grow the oranges, fit into an existing market, you know, and try to focus on import substitution, or do you want to create a new market? Some of our most successful farmers on this side, like Terry Weaver with his dragon fruit, and what he does with mangoes over here, kind of Yeez on Maui with mangoes. Our president of the fruit growers, Mark Suiso, with Makaha mangoes. He's a grower and aggregator, both. They've been pretty successful fitting into either fitting into existing markets or creating new ones. I think the next step is to take a fruit like Ma Prang and not just have one or two trees, but have 500 trees. And Ma Prang is also known as mango plum. And it looks like let's see if I can get in there close. It's about a little bigger than an egg, but it tastes like a mango plum mix. This is fantastic, delicious fruit that you can get all over Southeast Asia, all over the Middle East, where it's shipped in from Thailand or Israel. And it's just a great thing. We have 500 of them in our greenhouse right now, growing out, you know, that will have from seed, or we'll graft a bunch of them too. There are some producing trees in Hilo. Oscar at Fruit Growers has a bunch, and some of the other growers over there. It's just that kind. There's another one called Tampoi, Beccaria macrocarpa, or like Frankie's Nursery has some Beccaria rambi in Waimanalo.
So from hearing you speak, I've heard you a few times, and actually just now, saying, you know, or indicating that there are a number of fruits out there that are really great and may perhaps be a lot better than the ones that you hear more commonly about, like mountain apple or mangosteen, right? But there are all these other fruits that perhaps we should be looking at and making markets or helping found or stir up markets to get interested in, because, you know, that sounds like you see them as easier to grow, taste better. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, it's not only that, it's learning about more of them. So let me take mountain apple, since you mentioned it. Mountain apple's a great fruit. I love to eat mountain apple, but you got 2 days of shelf life. Mountain apple, Syzygium malleensis is the botanic name. Take Syzygium samarcansis, which is called wax apple or wax jambu or just jambu. Tastes almost the same, usually a little bit sweeter than mountain apple, and it lasts a week, 10 days. So again, thinking in terms of, and it produces and grows very quickly, even more than mountain apple, and it's easier to maintain and keep pruned than mountain apple. So, and then you have jambu air or water apple, Syzygium aqueum, which is another one. So you have these three cousins that are for different markets. Syzygium aqueum are given to women after childbirth in Malaysia because of the electrolytes. So you have a bottle of Gatorade or a handful of water apples and get the same, literally, the benefits in terms of electrolytes. So when we look at nutritional value of all the fruits, that's a whole other topic to get into someday. Maybe the next one of these we do. But the longevity of shelf life is important. You talked about transporting these things to different islands, and that you can't do that if you only got 2 days of shelf life before the thing starts to get mushy. So wax jambu is going to last a lot longer than that. And
It's just
that's
yeah, I'm going to interrupt because here's the struggle I have as a producer, right? And trying to decide what to grow is if there's no market, right? To me, it feels like the whole effort that would be required in order to grow a market and to share awareness about something feels like this massive hurdle. I mean, I think it probably helps to have a chef in the family or a number of chefs in a network that could help get the word out and change palates. But tell me, am I wrong that it's not that big a hurdle, or is it, what's the best way to make that happen?
I mean, you have to work it. I mean, when we were doing that and taking these fruits, we went to a lot of the chefs in Honolulu. I mean, I used to bug the hell out of Alan Wong, to try this, to try that, sending boxes of stuff to Roy, and Peter Merriman and I go back a long way. So all those guys, and Sam Choi and I were born about a week apart from each other. So I've known Sam for over 35, 40 years already. So the educational part, maybe it's just me, but I don't think that's difficult for people to do because chefs are very open to that. We have chefs meeting every month on the Big Island, so people are always welcome. You have something you want to talk about, come on in and do it. Contact me. You can contact Chef Paul Heerline at Hawaii Community College at Palamanui in Kona. You can try to find some of the chefs on Oahu, the big name chefs. I mean, if you go to Ed Kenny and Alan Wong, they want to know what you're growing. They want to know doesn't mean they're going to buy it, but they want to know. And give them some samples. Don't be afraid to, here, try some of my mountain apples or wax jambu or water apples or whatever it is.
And they're approachable. I mean, you can
as long as you're taking care of it.
Huh? Yeah. How does that work? They're approachable. Like I feel like I would be nervous or wouldn't even know how to approach Alan Wong. But
that's you. You walk up to Alan's a great guy.
Yeah.
Leanne Wong on Maui. I mean, Peter Merriman's on Maui most of the time. So there's chefs on every island that are used to that. And even if those named chefs aren't in the restaurant, the famous guys, there's somebody doing the work in those restaurants. So you go into the restaurant in the morning and say, I'd like to leave this for the chef and my card's in the box. Peter Merriman always told stories how a lady was showing up at the back door of his restaurant in Waimea every day, and he pretended he wasn't him, and I don't know when he's coming in, and finally said, well, I just want to give him some basil. And he said, well, I know we don't need basil, we need tomatoes. So she went home and started growing tomatoes, and fortunately in Waimea that's pretty easy to do. Getting tomatoes in Kona is another story. But it's not only knowing the markets that are there, but finding the markets. So it could be, if you're working with wholesalers like our wholesaler adaptations, finding out what they do want. I mean, well, I've got 2 acres. I mean, what should I grow? I usually, when I get asked that, which is like weekly, say, well, what do you like to eat? What do you mean? What do I like to eat? Well, you got 2 acres. You got to grow something. What do you want to eat? I don't know. Well, I can't decide for you. You have to decide for yourself what you're going to grow, what you're going to market, what you're going to cook with or make value-added products from. You've got lots of choices. I mean, we have 1,500 species. around here to work with. So um, you've got you've got a lot of choices, and talking, the more people you talk to in terms of chefs, wholesalers, you can go right to Foodland. You can go right to Suisan. You can go right to Diotani or Strong Arm, Armstrong Produce. Oops, it's my favorite slip there. You have to do the work. Nobody's going to sit and tell you something and make it easy, and then say, "Oh, I'm going to need we're going to need, let's say, mountain apples or lettuce. We need lots of romaine lettuce." Well, by the time you go back there and, hey, I have all this romaine lettuce. Well, we got that 3 years ago. I mean, what do you got now? We need tree tomatoes. Oh, I don't have any of those. Well, it's back to the stuff. So you have to diversify. I mean, I like to diversify by month, not just 2 or 3 crops, but basically 12 crops. Because if I like to blow one off and go to Japan for a month, I don't want to have to worry about it. But I want a fruit of the month club. That way there's always going to be some overlap. There's always going to be some income, rather than having everything fall by the wayside. The people who only have Kona coffee are hurting with all the coffee leaf rust and the coffee berry borer.
Fruit of the Month Club strikes me as a great idea for a couple of reasons, right? If that's a real thing, right, you could introduce some of these fruits that you're talking about through your Fruit of the Month Club to get people to know about them and interested.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that actually something you do as Fruit of the Month Club?
No, not at all. I mean, I just grow things so that every month there's something different, and people know to stop by our Saturday fruit stand and see what my wife has that's new this week. I don't even keep up with what she harvests sometimes. I'm too busy looking at the new stuff,
Right.
Or more seeds. So our greenhouse has at any one time, 10 crops in it that have some kind of potential for the future.
Well, that's I think one of the tougher things for some producers is fruit trees and trees in general, right? Is you have to be more patient. You have to wait a few years, right? So before you even know what you have. So maybe it's good.
That's exactly right. Now there are some things, and well, bananas are quick, figs are very quick. You have a papaya is very quick. So you have things like that where you only have to wait 1 or 2 years, and then you have mangosteen and jabote calvin. It's like Rip Van Winkle. You might as well just go to sleep for 20 years. It takes time to make sure those things are going to develop. But Mr. Takashiba, my teacher, was planting mangosteen seeds at 98. And these are going to be 20 years to produce. You plant for generations. Like in Japan and the UK, there's forests where they plant trees to fix the churches and the temples every 400 or 500 years. So we have to think in terms of the generations. If it's not for us, I mean, people got to eat. If we thought of that 50 years ago, all of this wouldn't be such an issue now, the sustainability or self-sustainability for the state.
I think there's a saying there. I'm trying to remember the quote. Maybe I'll look it up after this and maybe put it in. But
the best time to plant a tree, yesterday. So it's all of those. Yeah, there's a few like that, and it's worth taking them all to heart. I think that the idea is to do something, and whether or not it's right or wrong, it's something. And in terms of ag, planting something is better than nothing. So a lot of times people will spend 3 years deciding what to plant. Well, in that 3 years, they could have been halfway there.
Exactly.
And so plant different things now. You can always take them out and replant them, or you can always work to find markets for them. Some things like farmling and some of the other producers I know on this island or the big, they just want something to make pickles with. They want to pickle, not just mango, but they'll pickle anything. Other people want to make jelly from anything. We take a fruit like balimbi, which is a extremely sour star fruit relative, and you juice that. It's 86% moisture, so you get a lot of liquid, and then you have it's about 6% acid. So you can make hot and sour soup. You can make salad dressing. We make mango chutney with it. It's endless what you can do with it. So utilizing these fruit for something outside of the in-room amenity basket and the buffet line is what's important. I mean, it's got to start moving forward at a faster rate. We've got to make things a little bit easier for the next generation. And the generation caught in the middle, it's not like this generation and that generation. There's all kinds of middle folks. And they're kind of like they're pulled in both directions.
Well, and the Seeds of Wellbeing project, right, is funded to look at some of the stressors of those ag producers, and what we found is the younger ones especially are more stressed. So any suggestions or advice you'd want to share with those younger farmers?
Are they stressed why are they stressed?
Financially, finding markets, finding labor, just to name it, pests and disease pressures.
We solved a lot of that by communications, and stressing the need for better communications between farmers, chefs, wholesalers, ranchers, fishermen. We need more of those types of conferences. And same guy, Kent Fleming, I talked about, who did the cost of production studies and taught ag econ, put together a lot of these conferences and that I helped him do in the 90s and the early 2000s. And when he retired, that was it. So we need to do a lot of those, because those taught certain communication skills between farmers and ranchers. Those also made introduction, because Peter Merriman talked up there, Sam Choi talked up there, and hung around so that those growers and chefs had a chance to interact with them. Alan Wong and Leanne Wong would come to a conference, and talk to people so that they could say, what do you have? I mean, we grow this. Are you interested? And nobody would be interested in this, or Leanne would be interested in that. The communications was there. And so I think having that is really really important, and getting UH to sponsor those conferences, getting the money to hold those conferences. I mean, this is going to be our 33rd year. It'll be on Oahu sometime in October, perhaps at University of Hawaii West Oahu, I think is where the conference. I'm not 100% sure because they're still trying to work out the details. But we won't have the chefs there. This is just fruit growing conference, and a little bit on nutrition and well-being and health this year.
Got it. So more communication and more communication with chefs and
wholesalers, food,
yep. Distributors. Got it.
Who doesn't like to talk about food, huh?
Yes. And make sure you're growing something that you love, right?
Yeah,
I think it makes all the difference.
Obviously, you and I like to eat, so it's
No problem there. So one last thing, I noticed that you've referenced Japan a few times. And so just wondering what the connection for you there is and how that evolved and how that's evolving.
Um, I got I got sent there by AP about the same. It might have been the same year I first came to Hawaii in very early 80s, maybe 1980 or 81, and I got hooked on that too. Um, and I've been back I've spent 2 or 3 months there a year from that 1981 to 2019 when the pandemic stopped everything. And so now I'm so busy teaching the food preservation systems or something to do with ag that I'm as soon as I get 2 free weeks, I'm out of here, man. I'm in Tokyo. I got to go shopping. Uh, people think it's so expensive there. No, it's way cheaper than Hawaii, especially for agriculture related tools. So, cut and hold pickers are $180 in Kona and 27 at the home centers in Japan, outside of Tokyo. So, my really good pruners are like $8 here and they're 70 some dollars here. It's, um, just the difference is pretty unbelievable. So yeah, I gotta go. I'm running out of everything, even my 100% soba noodles.
Bring
uh,
an extra empty suitcase with you, right, to fill.
I just buy another one there because those are so cheap, and the wheels happen to stay on when you buy a suitcase in Japan instead of fall off. Even one trip on Hawaiian Airlines, your new suitcase for Macy's or Ross or something is in pieces, but not the ones from Japan. So my, you know, what can I say?
But if there's anything else you'd like to share with our
Water
audience.
is right. I mean, I do a lot of things that UH says not to do, in terms of pruning practices, in terms of irrigation, in terms of fertilizing. Uh, so that's those three main things. I mean, everybody says water at the tree line. I never water at the tree line. For the first 3, 4 years, if I plant a small seedling tree or grafted tree, that's maybe 2, 3 feet tall, I water right close to the trunk. Oh, you'll rot everything out. No, I don't rot everything out. I just give it a little water every day, rain or shine, but it may be 3 minutes of water, but they like the regularity. What we found that after 5 years of doing that, that getting that water right there, yeah, the roots don't go out, but that much, but you have 15 times the root mass. So then you move the water out overhead past the tree line, and you have 15 times the roots, or 8 to 15 times, depending on the species of roots moving out. So that was a big difference we found. I mean, um, my new farm is 8 years old, and people can't believe the size of the trees here because we've done it that way. Water is life. People don't irrigate here, even in wetter areas. They don't irrigate, and the trees are very stressed when they have that. You water for production as well as to keep trees alive. So if you want to have good water, you want to have good production, then you got to have water. Yeah, I know. I spend about uh, mm, I don't know, not quite $500 a month for water, but pretty close.
Yeah, and are these
Uh,
techniques that you learned from a teacher that you had or just experience?
just experience mostly. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, pruning techniques all came from studying in Japan and India. I lecture at 2 universities in India and 3 in Japan. So um, a lot of that's been reinforced over the last 30 years too, 40 years already. Man, it goes by quick. Don't blink. That's what I advise everybody. Don't blink, man. It's just like
And
really quick.
I think in Hawaii, we're lucky enough to have you as a resource on the Big Island on Saturdays, it sounds like, at Love Family Farms, and also on the Facebook group anywhere. I see you as one of the frequent responders and sharers of knowledge there.
Yeah, I try. Um, the other thing of the pruning too is that Mr. Takashiba was he always said it takes guts to prune, and which it does. You've been watching this tree grow for 10 years, and then you whack the top of it off. I mean, that just scares the hell out of people. Um, uh, Richard Campbell from Florida, who has many mango pruning videos out, and he's really well known to work with mangoes, and previously the curator at Fairchild Tropical Garden there. He it takes guts to prune, as he whacks this beautiful mango tree down to next to nothing, and then a couple minutes later, you see how the tree's filled out next year with 8 million mangoes on a tree that you can touch the top of. And so there's these sorts of tricks that need to be learned. And not everything that we in Hawaii applies elsewhere, and not everything from elsewhere applies to Hawaii. But not everything that I do on the Big Island applies to Kauai. I mean, we have every microclimate imaginable in this state, and they all need something different. So you have to do the work. You have to know your farm. You have to know your trees. The same orange tree that I work with in Kona will not perform the same way where you are. As an example, so at our we have these 2-acre repositories. Now I took a Kampong mauve sugar apple from Kauai, which produces nice, purple fruit on like the cherimoya relative, and we planted it on a Molokai, and they were twice the size, grafted from the same source tree. Beautiful fruit, and in Kona, nothing, little dried up hard pebbles of nothing. Never had a fruit here in 8 years, where we got all these beautiful fruit on Kauai and Molokai, and all from the same source. So what explains that? Well, microclimate.
So is it really just have to come down to trial and error, and you won't know until you try?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we keep telling people, just go see what your neighbor has. Well, I don't know my neighbor. Well, look over the damn fence. I mean, you gotta do some work. I cannot tell you what it's like. And it's the same thing here in Kona. I mean, I plant things at the top part of my farm and the bottom of my farm, and they respond differently.
We hope you've enjoyed this talk story with Ken Love, and we thank him for the time and information he's shared about growing tropical fruit in Hawaii. For even more information about growing fruit in Hawaii, please check the show notes for links to his 90-minute Hilo County Farm Bureau presentation. Mahalo.
The other thing we used to do is with bananas, and I can leave you with this. Is kind of funny, is that the bananas are you cut your bananas up and you take them to your customer and neat in the box. And I can remember taking them to one of my chef friends on the whole, rack of bananas that, 4-foot long, 5-foot long rack of bananas. And I have it tied up on a TP in the back of my truck. And Bill, come on and look at this. So it was Chef Trask, and he comes out there. What the hell am I going to do with that? You're going to put it on the buffet line. Are you nuts? Yeah, let's just put it out there and see what happens. I won't even charge you for it. You can just have this rack of bananas. And he just shakes his head, helps me carry it in. We put it, this is about 5:30 in the morning before the buffet line opens, and we put it in the middle of the table, and then they start putting all the dishes around it. People couldn't get to eat breakfast that morning because everybody was in front of it getting their picture taken with the rack of bananas. So these kinds of changes. Now, when you walk through to your room at Four Seasons, they have all these wooden teepees with racks of bananas on them, just hanging there. And people are welcome to just take a banana off and eat it if it's ripe, or the kids push them and play with them. And they come in different colors. They can see blue bananas and red bananas, and of course yellow and slightly orange bananas. That makes a difference. So it becomes, what we do at the fruit becomes part of the whole visitor industry as well. I mean, everything is connected to everything else, and so you have to look at that as well. And bananas are a good example of that.
That's a good story. I mean, it's another example of a theme that I'm hearing from you, which is be fearless, right? And try something and see what happens, and
give stuff away. I mean, it's worth it to get a movement started. I mean, to give. That was the best bunch of bananas, and I mean, I wasn't exactly well-to-do. Well, I'm still not, but back then it was even harder to. And I said, God, do I really want to give these bananas away to Bill? It was the best thing I ever made because it cut my labor time in half. I didn't have to buy boxes, or go get used boxes. And he just bring the rack in, bring me 3 racks, and then you won't have to come for 2 weeks. And it was great. It just made a change.
nice.
Of course, he was at the first Farmer Chef Conference here in '92 when we had a Farmer Chef Conference, and all of these things we need to revitalize now, because it's a new generation of growers, really, because the old timers like me don't do it anymore or can't physically do it. And you've got a new generation that is more into it. They want to get out. They want to do things, where we kind of just sort of fell into it.
The intention of this podcast series is to create a safe space for respectful and inclusive dialogue with people from across a broad and diverse spectrum involved in growing and making accessible the food we share together. A diversity of voices, perspectives, and experiences can serve to deepen mutual understanding, to spark creative problem solving, and provide insight into the complexities of our agricultural system. If you, our listeners, have experiences with Hawaii agricultural ecosystems, from small holder farms to large, even including multinational agricultural industrial companies, or anywhere in between, and you would like to share your story, please contact us. We welcome your voices and perspectives.